Oh, I'm down to the last few things that I need to clean up to put that wing back together to start putting the leading edge on. What? You want to get up here? Huh? Go. All right, let's start over again. I'm getting down to the last few things that I need before putting the leading edge back together, starting putting it on. I've got the landing light assembly here. I stripped the paint off of parts of it and got it cleaned up, but there were some of the parts here that the paint wouldn't strip off of. Paint stripper wouldn't touch the paint on it, so I'd take it down and sandblast it. And there's some pieces and stuff that are dented on here that need a little bit of repair to them. We'll get to that. This piece here is the main bulkhead that goes in the back. That's, okay, cat. That's this piece right here, and it goes back in the back there. And then I've got the leading edge, the tip, leading edge tip skin. And that thing looked like it had a quilt underneath it, or had been stuffed with rags or something. In fact, many years ago, a quasi friend of ours borrowed Super Cub from his father-in-law and took it over to Sitka for their herring season. And the whole tail on the Super Cub, it was on floats. The guy did the job that I'm doing now. The guy that owned the airplane did the job that I'm doing now. And so it was a Super Cub on floats. Well, the whole horizontal stabilizers were rotted out, and this guy wanted to fly the airplane over there to go herring spotting, so he got some cans of spray foam and stuck in, cut holes in the fabric and stuck in there and filled it up with spray foam. And that's kind of what this thing looked like. It was just all lumpy and bumpy underneath the red oxide primer. Well, I got the red oxide primer off, and it was just covered with body filler. There's a few little dents and dings in it and stuff, but it had more body filler on it than what was necessary for filling these dents and dings. So I'm going to see if I can kind of straighten this out a little bit so it doesn't take as much body filler to smooth it out and make it look better than what it did. We got that to do. And then I've got the pitot tube. I brought it down here a couple days ago, I guess yesterday, to put the bracket for the pitot tube on, to modify it, and I put nutzerts in it so I could mount this up. Well, this has been a kind of a sore spot for a while. This tab right here is soldered onto these tubes, and the solder joint on there was broken, so this thing was kind of flopping on there a little bit. So I wanted to repair it. I cleaned it all up and resoldered this on there straight, and then I powder coated it and stuck it in the oven to cure the powder coat. Well, we had a little snafu there. The temperature of the oven to cure the powder coat was hot enough that it melted the solder on here, and all the solder dripped out, and this plate that I'd resoldered on kind of came loose again. And anyway, it was a mess. Well, I went in and looked up online to see what I could do about getting a new pitot tube, and Univair has them, but they wanted over $200, almost $200 for one. So by the time I got it shipped and everything, it'd be over $200. And this is as simple as it could be. There is nothing $200 about this at all. This is two pieces of, what is that, 3/16 inch copper tubing. Got one piece here that is bent and goes all just straight through, and then one piece that's a little longer that matches that, and it's plugged on the end with solder, and then it has two little wire-sized holes in it. And what happens, and then there's just a metal, real thin, that must be 32 thousandths piece of sheet steel. Actually, that's not 32 thousandths, that's 25 thousandths. Anyway, a circle cut out of steel that is soldered onto that mounts, and that goes up through and mounts into the wing. And what happens here is when you're flying, you get ram air that goes in here and pressurizes this line in primarily to the airspeed indicator, and the pressure difference between the outside air and the ram air, or the pressure that's being pushed in here, is what actuates the airspeed indicator. And this other tube is the static air line it's got two little holes here on the side, so it doesn't get ram air. It just senses the air pressure, and it changes as you go up in altitude. The air pressure changes, of course, and this just senses the outside air pressure, and that sends that into a tube, and that goes up to the altimeter, also to the vertical speed indicator, because as this changes altitude, even small changes in altitude, as it's changing, the vertical speed indicator will sense the rate of change and show that on the indicator. And the airspeed indicator also uses the static air pressure and the difference between the static air pressure and the ram air pressure to tell you what the airspeed is. So anyway, that's just as simple as it could be. Like I said, it's not worth $200 by any means. So anyway, I went ahead and cleaned this up. I desoldered this and cleaned it all up, straightened these tubes out, and resoldered them, and resoldered this mounting tab on there. So now it is perfect, and I just saved myself $200 and some. This doesn't go on the wing until after the wing's all done, once we assemble the wing, because it's just soft copper tubing and it can get all bent up. So I won't put this on there until after the wing is done, but I wanted to get it cleaned up. It had just gobs of paint on it. It was thick with paint, so I got all the old paint cleaned off of it, and now I can repaint it to match the wing when the time comes. Anyway, that's done, and my friend showed up yesterday from Montana with the white oak board, so now I can make my wingtip bow, which is kind of the last thing we were waiting for, getting this together, this cleaned up, and the wingtip bow, and then we can start putting the leading edges back on the airplane. Well, he came up from Montana, and he came the long way. They couldn't get on the ferry in Bellingham and come up, so he wound up driving all the way up through Canada in the middle of winter to go to Skagway, and caught the ferry south from Skagway. He said he couldn't even get on the ferry in Bellingham for several months, I guess. They're all booked up. I think that I've read someplace that they're booked up through the whole year already, or through the whole summer season already. Anyway, I got my white oak board that I can use to make the wingtip bow with, and the weather is supposed to clear up here. We had about a week of just beautiful weather here. In fact, day before yesterday, it was 55 degrees, and all the snow is gone here, even up probably almost 1,000 feet or so on the hillsides, and it was spring-like. And then yesterday it started raining. I stuck my 5-gallon bucket outside, and in about 2 or 3 hours it was filled up, catching rain off the roof of the house here. But it's supposed to clear up for a few days here tomorrow and the next few days, so I can open the hangar up and take my woodworking tools out so that I can work on that lumber to fix that wingtip bow. This is going to take a little bit of time because I'm going to do a little bit of body work on this. I don't know if that'll show up, but we've got some wrinkles in here on the leading edge of that, and there's a few dents and stuff in here. And I've taken some of them out already, just using the hammer handle and pressing on them. But some of this stuff, like here, that's not going to come out. But I can mitigate them. I can take them out. I might be able to put the torch on that and anneal it a little bit, and then get them to come out a little better. And then if I heat it up and put some ice on it, that'll shrink that metal, because when it gets a dent in it like that, it stretches the metal and it'll never come back out to the same shape. So I might be able to shrink it a little bit and get it down to where it smooths out a little bit better. Try to get as much of this cleaned up as possible without using body putty on there, or any more body putty than I have to. Well, it ain't perfect. It ain't as good as new, but it's a lot better than it was. And it's not going to take near as much body putty to fill this in as what was on it when I got it. Now, there was no scenario where it wasn't going to take any body putty that it was going to be as good as new, but that is not too bad. I'm not ashamed of that. There's a pretty good wrinkle right here. It still shows, but it's mostly gone. A lot better than it was. So I'm going to clean this up, put it in the acid bath, wash it, get this inside cleaned up, and then we'll paint it with some, I've got some self-etching primer. I'm going to prime it with self-etching primer, and then I've got some primer that goes, that's a sandable primer filler type stuff. Sanding it down a little bit, and then we'll be able to see where the high spots and low spots are. And once I do that, then I'll be able to tell where I need to put the Bondo or put the body putty on there. Okay, that's about all I'm going to do with that without screwing it up. I was able to get it shaped pretty good there without heating it up. I was thinking about heating it up and annealing it, making it a little bit easier to work, but I think I got it pretty good. I've got the wingtip leading edge skin to work on. I've painted it. You can see in here maybe the gray primer, self-etching primer. I painted the whole thing with that. And then the outside of it here I painted with a sandable primer. It's supposed to be scratch filler, but I got it so I can sand this down and see where the low spots and the high spots are and see what needs to be filled with body putty. This is not the kind of paint that this stuff is not designed for that. They actually make paints that are designed for doing that and spray on body putty, stuff like that, but where I'm at, getting that would be next to impossible. We don't have a body shop anywhere here close, and this is the best I could do from Napa. I'll get this sanded down, smoothed down, and put the body putty to it to get it smoothed out. And then I'll paint it with, have to mix up some more of the 2-part polyfiber epoxy primer, a little bit of that. And that'll be the last thing I have to paint is that. So it's coming. I get that wingtip bow fixed and landing light fixed and this thing fixed, and we'll start putting it back together, putting the wing leading edges on. Here's the wingtip leading edge skin. I've got it coated with some sandable primer, and I just went up and dug out 2 totes from overhead storage there on the overhead shelf. One of them's got sandpaper in it, and the other one's got electrical wiring supplies in it. So I'll get some sandpaper and start sanding that down. Then once I get the black down off of it, the sandable primer off of it, it'll be able to show where the high spots and low spots are, and then I can mix up some body putty, fill that in and get it smoothed out. And hopefully when I'm done with it, it won't look like it's stuff full of rags like it did before. So anyway, I'm making progress. It's starting to come together. So I'm going to dig out some sandpaper, start sanding down that leading edge skin there, that wingtip leading edge skin. I just took this leading edge out and sanded it down a little bit, some 320 sandpaper. Looks like a spotted skunk now, but you can kind of see the high spots in it. And not very much. I can't hardly feel them. I might go ahead and try to knock some of those down just a little bit with a body hammer again. A few little low spots and some high spots here on this front leading edge. Mainly, it doesn't look too bad. Now if this was steel, if this was a car body part or something like that, I'd get my shrinking dolly or my shrinking hammer out and hammer it with that. But this aluminum has probably had just about as much hammering on it as it'll stand without annealing it. I might tack these down just a little bit, but actually it's not too bad. When I run my hand over it, can't hardly feel it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to knock them down just a little bit again, work them over just a little bit more, and then we'll paint it. I'll paint it again with some more of this sandable primer, sand it down again and see how it is. And then I'll just mix up some body putty. See, I got a little dents right there, a little spot right there, Low spot here next to these high spots. A little bit of low spots mixed in with high spots here where this was wrinkled. And the high spots almost sanded down. Again, if it's steel, if I was working on an old car body or something, I could go ahead and sand those down, but with this aluminum I can't really do that. That is in progress, so I'll set that aside for now. Maybe I'll work on that now and go ahead and spray that with some primer again to let it dry, and then while that's done, I'll work on that landing light assembly. Alright, let me get to work here, get something done today. Well, I took the hammer and dolly and kind of went over this wingtip, and then I went ahead and painted it again with some of that sandable primer. I just got done sanding it again for the second time, and it is improved. It doesn't look near as bad as it did the last time that I painted it with the high spots showing up on it. I still got a couple here and there high spots, and there's still low spots of course in it. I wasn't going to do much more to it, but I think I'm going to go ahead and try to knock some of these high spots down again, just a little bit more. Low spots in here, those are the dark spots where the paint didn't get sanded, where the sandpaper scribed over them. And those aren't so bad, those are easy enough to fill. I don't want to have to fill up to the high spots. Alright, so no matter what I'm going to do here with this, I'm not going to get it perfect, and I don't think I'm going to get it any better than it is now. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that one more time with the primer, sand it down again, and then we'll know for sure where the high spots and low spots are, and then I can put some body putty on it. Well, I got that wingtip skin all done up, I think. Got body putty on it. Feels pretty darn good. Looks pretty darn good. There's not a whole lot of body putty on here. This is really thin, a lot thinner than it looks, a lot thinner than what was on here before. So I've got a few little dimples filled in, and the high spots sanded down to all matches, and so it's nice and pretty and smooth now. Looks a lot better than it did. I mixed a little bit too much activator in the epoxy, and that stuff hardened up before I had it all smoothed out, so it was thicker than it should have been. It took a lot of sanding to get it down, a lot more sanding than I expected to get it down, but worked out pretty good. I got it pretty nice, I think. They did better than it was, so it should look pretty good. Now I got to mix up some of the polyfiber epoxy primer and paint this, and once it cures it'll be ready to go on. The wingtip leading edge cover is all done. I got it all painted, and it looks pretty as a new puppy. Nice and smooth. A little bit of rough stuff down here where I didn't get it sanded out quite enough on the body putty, but otherwise it looks pretty good, I think. Better than it did before.